to talk about this, that this is something that should have been done all along. This is a part of our ethics ordinance. And again, I want to just highlight, I know these registration letters have been filed in their proper places, but they are to be sent directly to the ethics board. And I think in one of the letters, the person highlighted, if you look at one of the pages here in the registration form, they highlight here, mail to Wayne County Ethics Board, and they put down our address. So whoever this person in this entity is, they wanted to make sure that this board received a copy of the registration, okay? That has never been done before. Obviously, it goes somewhere where it's being registered, but this board has never received these registration letters. So this person wanted to make sure, which tells me this is someone who may be paying attention to our meetings, looking at the minutes or the records, and realizes that this is something that has to be done and should have been done in the past. Ms. Spivey, I do want to also I know we had some email exchanges. I do want to apologize to Ms. Spivey because I'm not sure if anyone was privy to the email exchange, and Ms. Lane did clarify it for me as well. But I did instruct Ms. Spivey when we were setting the agenda today to add these letters into the agenda. And apparently Ms. Spivey talked to Ms. Lane, and Ms. Lane instructed her that this generally doesn't happen, that this will be on our agenda. I did ask Ms. Spivey not to mention the agenda to anyone outside the ethics board until it's been set. Again, I learned that Ms. Spivey does not actually work for the ethics board. Ms. Spivey works for the commission. And as Ms. Lane instructed me, that everything Ms. Spivey does goes through her, which goes through the commission. It would appear. I'm not sure if it goes through the actual commission, but it goes through her. That raises a concern of mine as well. And again, Ms. Lane, I thank you so much for clearing that up for me today. There was some misunderstanding, but under our operating rules and procedure, it says specifically that they're supposed to, as they're supposed to be an attorney for this board, there's also supposed to be a secretary for this board exclusively. Or I would say correspondent, someone told me that secretary is no longer politically correct to say, so I would say maybe a correspondent for this board. If the person who, in my understanding, Ms. Lane said that Ms. Spivey is a designee from her office to this board, that designee answers to the commission, not to this board. This board should have its own correspondent as we have our own attorney, a person that's loyal and their duties and obligations are to this board and not to an outside entity. If you look at our rules and procedure for the Wayne County Ethics Board, it says under subsection A, which is the complaints, it says the ethics board secretary shall promptly forward all complaints to all ethics board members and to the ethics board attorney. It mentions the secretary for the board throughout. So it says there, and it shows that there should be a person who exclusively works for the ethics board, not as sort of a designee. So again, that's something that should be addressed. It may have to be addressed with my successor, but I did want to bring that to the board's attention. With that said, if there's no questions regarding the registration letters that we received, if there's any questions, I'll open it up to any questions or concerns. If not, we'll move on to the next item of our agenda. Mr. Thomas.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
That I'd like to ask to Mr. Longstreet, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
My question would be this. This appears to be the first time any of us have seen this done before, where we receive these. We don't have a secretary right now. I did speak to Mr. Longstreet for just a moment or two before the meeting today, and he indicated to me that he was going to maintain copies of these and in the future would maintain copies of these. I guess my question would be, is that sufficient, having our attorney do that? Or would it be necessary for us to vote in a secretary at some point in time, a secretary of the board? I'm just throwing it out as a question. I don't know enough about the situation, but maybe that's also something that we can discuss. But at least for today, we have Mr. Longstreet saying that he's going to start compiling these. So we'll always know where they are.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Now I see Ms. Lane is right behind. Ms. Lane, we want to add something to this? Or?
Yes, so they're on the agenda to be received. Records.
So when you say we, are you saying the commission?
Yes, commission staff will maintain.
Um, Well, let me just ask Mr. Longstreet, because this is something that's stated in the ethics ordinance, that this is supposed to be filed. And Mr. Longstreet, how do you read the ordinance as it says with respect to these lobbyist letters, the lobbyist registration under 40-6?
I believe 40-6 requires that I keep a copy or the board keeps a copy of the lobbyist registration. Upon a request of verification of that particular person's registration, I'm supposed to provide that verification of the registration to the public servant that request verification of the lobbyist registration with the Wayne County Ethics Board. So it's my understanding pursuant to the statute 40.6 that I am to keep the copy of the records.
Just so we're clear too, if everyone has a copy of the ethics board, the ethics ordinance in front of them, we're looking at 40-6 under subsection B. It says, public servant who reasonably believes that an individual is a lobbyist shall verify registration with the ethics board before continuing communications with the individual. Would that say, with that language there, would that also confirm what you're saying, that the ethics board should keep a copy? Because how can this board confirm that this person is actually a lobbyist if the ethics board does not have copies of these on file itself?
That's the inference I would draw from the language of the statute, that if the board is going to verify the registration, the board needs to have the copy of the registration.
Mr. Thomas, did that answer your question, sir?
That does.
Okay, and I see Miss Johnson is here today. Good morning, Miss Johnson. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Just for clarification purposes, so the ordinance indicates that this body will be provided with the appropriate staff support. It says professional assistance and technical support as necessary. Doesn't specifically say a secretary. The commission and the county in general has determined that the commission clerk's office will be your secretary and clerk for this body. They maintain the records similar that they do with other bodies that we maintain records for, because we are record keepers. If this body desires to have a secretary, which I understand you said were in your rules, but those rules were developed by your prior attorney. They're not necessarily consistent, in my opinion, with this ordinance, because the ordinance doesn't say you need a secretary. That's something that someone drafted on your behalf, but we know that the ordinance trumps ultimately, because the ordinance is the law that establishes this body. If this body desires to have a separate staff person, you can engage the county on a, not obviously in this meeting, but behind the scenes. The problem with that is that this body meets once a month. Having a full-time person for this body through the county probably is not the best way to proceed. But again, those are discussions that you are free to have with the county. With regards to record keeping, the problem with any attorney for this board keeping the record is that the attorney changes. These records by law must be maintained for an extended period of time, similar to the commission. We maintain those records separately from the commission's records, but they are maintained. I will speak on behalf of Ms. Lane and say that we apologize for not sending these registration forms to you prior to. We have them. If you would like us to go back to send them all to you, so you have them, you have them. But they're technically in the files for the ethics board. They simply were not presented to this body because it's not something that you would necessarily take action on, but it is something that we can easily remedy by providing you with every registration form that's been received since this body has, since the inception of this body, because we do have those and they are technically in your records. So when we keep the records for the ethics board, they're not in the commission's records, they're separate records, just like we have other entities and bodies that we keep records for. Just wanted to provide some clarification. And again, if there's anything other you need, that can be handled behind the scenes with the appropriate
Well,
individuals.
Ms. Johnson, hold on for a quick second, because you mentioned a few things, and it's just some follow-up question, because you said, the commission would keep these records because attorneys change. Here in the rules and the ordinance, it says 40-6, it says, the registration, they shall present these records, the registration letters by January 1st of each year. So the lobbyists are supposed to file these letters each year. So if an attorney changes, there are going to be new letters coming each additional year. So actually this board should have, am I reading that wrong? So is that
The
saying that
records have nothing to do with your attorney. The
No,
county-
no. What I'm saying is the registration letters where a lobbyist is registering with the county as a lobbyist. they're saying that those letters, they have to be filed each year by January 1st.
Yes.
So an attorney changing wouldn't take those records with him, or that there would be new records coming in every year by the first of each year, correct?
Well,
If I'm
okay,
reading the ordinance
so I
correct.
guess to clarify, it's my understanding the county has established on its website a method by which lobbyists file. There is a section on the county's website for the ethics board. They go to that section, that's where they actually file, is my understanding, the registration for the lobbyists. So it's not, while it's a part of Wayne County, because you're a part of Wayne County, it is under the ethics board section. They file it electronically. Ultimately, that electronic file makes it to you, this body. Because Ms. Lane is the clerk, it makes it to her office. The failure in the process is that they've never been added to your agenda. So that's sort of the breakdown in the process. With regards to Mr. Longstreet keeping them, I don't know what his scope of services and what Corp Counsel intended. I do not believe in that. And we can have this discussion again, that it was intended to be the record keeper, because that's contrary to the way we've operated, contrary to how the staff has been set up. But again, discussions can be had to determine what's best with regards to moving forward. I may not be that person to have that full discussion with you, but obviously there are individuals in the county that can have those discussions if you so desire to have a change in the way staffing has been presented or operating.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we're following the ethics ordinance, because it says that it's supposed to be filed with the ethics ordinance, with the ethics board, not with the county commission, not with
But
the
it
commission
is with the
record
ethics
keeping.
board. It's a county website that has a section for the ethics board. That's been established by the county. The problem is who has access to it. We would not necessarily give a contractor access to those records, but those records do come through your clerk and you have them. Again, the
So-
failure has
So
been,
not to cut
put
you
it on
off,
your
so if
agenda.
we need to confirm that a person is a registered lobbyist, then we have to come through the clerk of the commission. That's because it says we have to verify. So we couldn't verify internally. We would have to verify through the clerk of the commission whether or not a person is a lobbyist, because the commission maintains those records. That's what you're saying, that it will come through the clerk of the commission, and that's because they're maintaining the records in their databases. So this board, to verify that a person is a lobbyist, has to go through the clerk of the commission to find out if that person is a lobbyist or not, just to verify it.
And again, maybe this is not the form, and I do not want to go back and forth with you. In this instance, the clerk of commission is working on your behalf for this purposes, and that is what she is doing. In this instance, the failure has been to simply put those on your agenda because no one's ever asked, no one thought to do so. It's something that can easily be remedied. I don't want to go back and forth with you, Mr. Pink, is perhaps some, again, behind the scenes discussions with the appropriate people can give further clarification.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Johnson. I do want to clarify too, Ms. Johnson mentioned that our rules was devised by our prior attorney. I remember the prior attorney for this board was Avery Williams. Mr. Williams did not devise these. But when I became chair of this board, the attorney for the board, which also our rules and the ethics ordinance says has to have attorney for the board. The attorney for the board was the Wayne County Corporation Counsel. Wayne County Corporation Counsel was receiving complaints from complainants, reviewing those complaints, and also in some instances representing the respondent. I talked to the predecessor of this, the predecessor of the current Corporation Counsel, and she stated that, and she came down here on the record and stated that we would no longer be providing counsel services for the ethics board, nor will we be receiving complaints, nor will we be representing the respondent, because actually the rule says that a respondent is allowed an attorney at their own expense. If the Corporation Counsel is serving as an attorney for a respondent, then that's on the county's expense, not that person's personal expense. So the predecessor of the current Corporation Counsel did explain that she would no longer be doing that. So I just wanted to clarify that this ethics rules and procedure was not created by our attorney for the board. It was created by possibly by the Corporation Counsel or whoever served as counsel for this board before I became chair and before we hired an attorney for the board. It says here on the back page that it was revised August 4, 2014. The board was created, I believe it was the fall of 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So this was revised. It means it was updated. It was an original one. It was updated in August 4th, 2014. So this was not, we did not have an attorney for the board in 2014, independent attorney for the board. So our attorney for the board did not draft this.
Through the chair.
But again, I'm not going to
the
go back and
charter-
forth. I
The charter
understand.
requires corp counsel to represent this board by law. Corporation counsel represented this board. They determined there was a conflict. They stepped away. They then engaged independent counsel. But corporation, that counsel goes through corporation counsel due to other laws and their responsibility to provide representation to the county in general. But again, I don't know if corp counsel is online. I will not further speak for them.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Pinkins, my comments are directed to our board members and to our council,
Sure.
not to anyone else. And I certainly don't want to get in back and forth with anybody. What we've heard here this morning is that there has been a failure to follow the ethics code. How it happened, why it happened, I have no reason to believe it was intentional or that anybody tried to hide it. But what we do know now is that there was a failure in the past, and we didn't get these forms. Why we didn't get them, the form says they're supposed to mail a copy to us, and these two individuals did, and but for that, we wouldn't even be perhaps discussing this today.
True.
I do not see it burdensome for our council to maintain a copy of these. I do not see it burdensome for any future filings to be forwarded to Mr. Longstreet. If we're going to strictly adhere to the ethics code and try to enforce all the various provisions, we got to do it, even if it creates some inconvenience for a county computer tech or an IT person. When something is filed, you send it to our council. And I would say this, to me, it would not matter whether our counsel, Mr. Longstreet, who represents us, makes a determination that he'd rather keep them on computer than have hard copies of them, because if that's easier to do, to keep them segregated on his computer, that would be fine. And I certainly don't want it to appear that every time one of these forms are filed, that it necessarily has to be put on the agenda. You can implement procedures that are foolproof because everybody knows them and everybody understands them and they're going to follow it. So I think what I'm contemplating doing, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I'm contemplating maybe making a motion here today that those records that are on file be transferred somehow to a form that Mr. Longstreet could maintain, probably on computer. I'm not speaking for him, but probably on computer. I don't know how many years backwards we have to go. I've got to believe that a lot of people that registered 10 years ago or 5 years ago are no longer interested in being a lobbyist with the county. But what I would say is this. I think we need to do something today to address this. I think from what I'm hearing, the whole concept of us needing a secretary that's a county employee serving this board would not be necessary. When I brought up a secretary, I was thinking maybe a secretary of the board, maybe they would take over that duty. But I'm not satisfied to know that there was a failure in the past and to know that the code wasn't followed. If we don't follow the code, how do we expect everybody else to follow the code? So my inclinations are to make a motion, and I think I'm going to do that. I believe that some catch up should be done. I believe that the forms that are now available somehow, somewhere on a computer form, on a computer base, that those be made available to Mr. Longstreet. If he is willing to take that on, I think that shouldn't be too much work for anybody. I mean, it would just computer access. And I believe that from this point forward, all lobbyist registration forms that are filed should be brought to our attention. Hopefully the people that are actually registering should be policed by the county employees to make sure that they're sending a copy of that to the board. So I'm making a motion that we take corrective action today. I don't know that we have to try to address everything long-term, but at least for now, I want to know personally, and this is what my motion goes to, that Mr. Longstreet be given access to that and that all future filings be made available to him.
Okay, so Mr. Thomas has made a motion. There's a motion before the floor. The call of the motion is to give the attorney for the board, Mr. Longstreet, access to the filings of the lobbyist registration forms and for him to keep a database of these forms. Is that the call? Is that correct?
Yes, that is, sir. Yep, yep.
Okay, now, at this time, since you have made the motion, Mr. Thomas, and I know you've had some discussion, do you want further discussion on your motion?
I would like further discussion if any other members want to comment on it.
Okay, for any further, yes, Ms. Lewis. Well, I'm assuming, I mean, obviously, I'm not sure about, Ms. Mahmood, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they are on the website. Now,
Oh, okay.
anybody can access and, you know, our attorney should be able to go download them. I just
Okay,
went to the Wayne County Ethics Board and you see the state lobby firms under contract with Wayne County and then the federal lobby firm and then the lobbyist registration right under that with link. And when you click on each link, including these two that we have, you can see the initial registration. My question is this a complete list? Because when someone filing that registration by sending it to that email, who's receiving that and is the website a complete list? Because as the chair mentioned, we kind of, as the record keeper of those lobbyist registration, I want to make sure it's accurate and complete list. So in case a public servant is talking to someone who they may think it's a, you know, he or she is lobbyist or agent, then they can, if they go to the website, is this a complete list? So, yeah.
But that's what we're trying to,
To address it.
yeah, Ms. Lewis, that's a big question because it says here that we're supposed to actually have devised a registration form by this board. But this has been taking place and we don't know the process of how this has been taking place. And so we're now just learning. And that's again, the reason why I wanted to put this on today's agenda, because this is a process that we've never seen these letters before. We can only assume that this was taking place, but we don't know the process in which it takes place, but it's under our obligation to know this process as it relates, as it's outlined in the ethics ordinance. And a bigger concern is we couldn't verify any particular potential or lobbyists who've registered because we didn't know the process. I mean, I guess we could go to the website, but we don't know if the website is complete and accurate or how these were received. And I am concerned, or the chair is concerned, that this particular person, these particular registration forms came mailed addressed specifically to the Wayne County Ethics Board. So whoever filed these, filed them, but they wanted to make sure a copy came directly to this board, which has not been done in the past. So I think in your motion, Mr. Thomas, we would have to not only give our attorney for the board access and also a way to set up a database to receive and keep some sort of database of this, but also to learn what the process is, how the process works. Because I'm not sure if we could ask Mr. Longstreet right now, how does the process work? He could fully answer that because he may not know. And that's something that the attorney for the board should probably know. So, Mr. Thomas, and your motion is still on the floor, Mr. Thomas.
I understand. What I don't understand is this. I do not understand how these forms that on page 2 say that they're supposed to be directed to the attorney, to the Wayne County Ethics Board, and our address is listed. I don't understand how other individuals within county government were getting a hold of them and putting them on a website without bringing them to our attention. I don't understand that. That was almost like, I don't want to use the term usurping, but it was like cutting us out of the process. So if somebody feels that the motion is premature and that Mr. Longstreet has to do some more investigation, that's fine. But somehow, some way in the future, our council has to know about these so that they could be brought to our attention so that we have a record of them. And then I would say this, if somebody doesn't properly register as a lobbyist, that could be a violation of the ethics code. And then we have to do something about that. So I don't know. I cannot understand how this happened, how this breakdown occurred between county government, county staff, and the ethics board. I
think-
don't understand.
I think Ms. Thomas wants to address this board again. Ms. Thomas? I'm sorry, Ms. Thomas. Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry.
Chair, so when this board was initially created, the lobbyist information and requirement was already in the ordinance. The initial body and members of that body were fully aware of this process. So I will understand that maybe over the years, as people have changed, there has not been an update or information, but the form and registration was actually created through this body. It was not created by commission staff. I did not create this registration form. It was actually created through this body. At the time, I believe it was Corp Council who met during meetings, I believe, had the bylaws or whatever you have. I think we have some rules that were created through Corp Council, through this body, not separately, in discussions with this body, registration form in discussion with this body. The way to process them and put them on a website, as my understanding, was all done initially when this body was created. Maybe there's been a failure over the years and without having some type of board onboarding to say, this is how everything works. This is what you currently have. So you would know what you have and you can determine how to change it. Perhaps that's been a failure of the attorney or someone in the past, which again could be rectified. We're glad to have any discussions you would like, probably not in this meeting with regards to the website. But again, it wasn't created because someone else just said, let's do this. It was actually created through the original members of this board. And if you would like changes to that process, again, that's all possible. It's not as if there's something that the county is saying we control and it must be done this way. But when the ordinance required the registration, the easiest way at the time was determined to have it electronically on the website. You'll see the form is there. They go in under ethics board and they do whatever. But again, I just wanted to make that clear. It wasn't something that the county did. It was actually through this board. And again, further discussions and changes is up to this body.
Yes, Ms. Lewis. All right, so, and we're gonna hold that because we're still with Mr. Thomas's motion at this time. So we're still having discussions regarding Mr. Thomas's motion. Is there a further discussion regarding the motion to give Mr. Longstreet, the attorney for the board, access to the lobbyist registration forms and to form a database to maintain those forms? There's still discussion taking place. Is there any further discussion from any members? Okay, if there's no further discussion, we're going to close discussion and actually we'll move to a second of the motion. Is there a second of the motion? Thank you, Ms. Lewis. All right, the motion has been made. The motion has been seconded. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, so move. All right, moving on to the next item of our agenda, or before we move on, I do know that Ms. Lewis, with respect to the motion that just passed, wanted to add also to it. Ms. Lewis, do you want to have the floor again to state your concerns?
Yes, as Ms. Johnson indicated, this process predates some of us that were on the board, and maybe there was a gap in communication. Best to ensure that we capture these lobbyists, just put on our agenda. If we don't have any, we don't have to cover it, but if we have some, we can discuss it.
Not sure if the chair would need, if we would need a motion for something like that. Now, what our rules and procedures does say is that the chair sets the agenda, oftentimes together with the attorney for the board. Now, if you want to recommend or ask that the
Oh.
chair add that to the agenda, then so be it. I have no problems adding that to the agenda to follow up with that. If you want to make an official motion that that be added to each agenda, that's that's something else. So do you want to make a motion that that be added to the agenda?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we add discussing the lobbyist applications to our agendas going forward.
Okay. Okay, the call of the motion made by Ms. Lewis is to have an agenda item added to the agenda for the Wayne County Ethics Board to discuss the registration of any and all lobbyist filings to this board or to the Wayne County. So that is the motion, if I'm not mistaken. So Ms. Lewis, I know you had some discussion, but do you want further discussion on your motion?
Yes.
Okay, the floor is yours.
I would like to just make clarify in my mind.
Yes,
what-
Mr. Thomas.
what the motion is. If I could, Chairperson Pinkett?
Yeah, yes.
Do I understand that each month when new lobbyist forms come in, we would want them placed on it?
And more,
There's one of them, 5 of them, 10 of them?
just administratively, I think the ordinance doesn't call for discussion, just recognize that we receive them and they're captured.
Is that the end of the discussion or?
For me, it is, sir.
Okay, all right. So at this point, is any other further discussion on the motion? All right, so the motion is before the floor. We're going to close discussion. Is there a second to Ms. Lewis's motion to add an agenda item to discuss the registration forms that are filed with the county with respect to lobbyists to the county?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. The motion has been seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. So moved. All right. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item of our agenda. We're going to go back up into the order now. We're under unfinished business. And we just want a quick update for item number 1. We have a complaint from a Jacqueline Jackson Broxton regarding Wayne County Sheriff, excuse me, regarding the Sheriff's Office foreclosure sales. Mr. Longstreet, do we have an update regarding the complaint from Ms. Broxton?
We do. I received a response from the Wayne County Sheriff's Department foreclosure auction sales department from the counsel of the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, Mr. David Milton, on November 14th, 2022. I have reviewed the answers to the complaint. There is pursuant to 40.7C of the statute that does give the complainant 7 days to reply to the Sheriff's Department's response. Upon receiving or being served with the Sheriff's Department's response, the complainant has 7 days to provide a reply to that. And also both parties have time to provide additional information if they choose to. That particular time period has not elapsed. However, they did provide an answer to the complaint. Quite frankly, I find the answer to the complaint to be insufficient with evidentiary or documentary support. And I would also be asking for additional information from the parties as well.
Mr. Longstreet, both the respondent and the complainant has 28 days from the date of the complaint to provide additional information?
That's correct. And that time period has not elapsed. And the complainant has 7 days from the date they are served with the Sheriff's Department's or the respondent's response to reply to that response. And that 7-day period has not elapsed.
Have we had communication with the complainant, Ms. Broxton?
No.
Do you intend to send a copy of the answer to Ms. Broxton?
Yes.
All right, if there is any further discussion on this matter from any board members. So at this time, this matter is still ongoing. I would take it, Mr.
That is correct. I should be able to bring to the board the answer to the complaint and the reply at the December meeting, and the board at that point should ask for a hearing if no additional or sufficient information is supplied.
Matter should be set for a hearing at our next meeting. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Longstreet. Any questions from Mr. Longstreet regarding the complaint from Ms. Broxton regarding the Wayne County Sheriff's Office foreclosure sales? There's no further questions from any board members. I'm going to move on. That matter is still pending on our agenda. I'm going to move on to new business. What I'm going to do also as chair, I'm going to excuse Mr. Longstreet. I think Mr. Longstreet is doing federal court. I don't want to upset any federal court judges. I may come before some of them. They may get upset with me. So I want to go ahead and let you excuse you, sir, so that you can return and do what you have to do.
So to maintain my responsibilities to this board, I got about 15 more minutes before I got to, I think I could run to the federal court in 5 minutes. So I got 15 minutes to last. So let's get to work.
Okay, well, let's work, but I just want to make sure. And don't go over there and tell them that Mr. Pinkins over there kept me a little bit too long there, Judge.
I can run. I got it. I'll be on time for you and I'll be on time for them. Trust me.
All right, well, moving on to the next item of our agenda. We have item number 1, which is under new business, item D. The discussion with Ms. Crystal Phillips, the Executive Director of the Detroit Board of Ethics regarding the ethics conference next spring in downtown Detroit. I think Ms. Phillips is here. Ms. Phillips, I think I read in the paper of your appointment as Director of the Detroit Ethics Board, and I just want to congratulate you, ma'am. And thank you for being here. Good morning.
On? Okay. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Good morning.
And thank you for the welcome, everyone. I've communicated with some of you via email and telephone. I am planning an ethics conference for late winter, so around February or March 2023. This will be our first ethics conference, and there's been a lot of interest so far. I've had about half a dozen regional ethics offices express interest in participating, but you are the first board to invite me to your meeting, so thank you. And I'd like to hear from all of you, your suggestions. I do have a list of suggestions on terms of topics that would be beneficial to boards throughout the region and the state. But given that I've been in this position for 3 months, I think all of you have the institutional knowledge and experience to also provide your suggestions as to what would be of interest to your board specifically, because we all run our meetings a bit differently, and we may all have different topics or issues that are important to us.
Okay, well, again, thank you for being here. Can you tell us briefly? So we're the Wayne County Ethics Board, and we know there's the Detroit Board of Ethics. What exactly does the Detroit Board of Ethics, what is their duties there? What exactly do they do over there?
So we conduct investigations. We also take complaints, and we do requests for advisory opinions. And I know that every ethics board does not do all of those things, but some of the topics for our conference may touch upon investigations, FOIAs, complaints, requests for advisory opinions. We plan to amend our ordinance. Starting this month, we're having a working group to amend our ethics ordinance. And there are several ethics boards who have also expressed interest in revising their own ethics ordinance. So there may be a session on that topic alone. Lobbying considerations, the hearing process. We were planning to have one hearing, but that was canceled. And so someone maybe from the Michigan Municipal League or the Michigan State Association of Parliamentarians may want to speak upon how to conduct hearings or an open meeting under the Open Meetings Act. Quorum, minutes, organization and conduct of meetings, all of those things that my board in particular would be interested in. But I wanted to hear from all of you as well.
How many members are on the Detroit Board of Ethics? I mean,
There
board
are
members.
currently 6 members. We have 1 vacancy.
And how are they? Are they elected? Are they appointed? How are the members?
They are appointed. So we have 3 board members that are appointed by the mayor, 3 appointed by city council, and 1 joint appointee.
What are the duration of the terms? Is it 4 years, 8 years?
I believe it's 4 years, but they can do a total of 2 terms.
I guess. Is there anything else that the ethics board does beyond the Detroit Board of Ed, beyond hearing complaints and things of that nature? Do they?
We also do training. So we are mandated by the ordinance to train all public servants in the city. That's around 9,000 employees. So we have a training specialist who is working on getting a learning management system. And we are working on getting the budget for that right now.
You have a training specialist that works for the Detroit Board of Ethics that trains, is that the employees of the city of Detroit? Is that elected officials or? is it both?
Employees, all employees of the city, but we're planning something bigger and better with the learning management system. So we have training individualized for, let's say, city council members, for supervisors, for general employees, et cetera. And we are also planning to hopefully do training in the community in the future.
And when you say training, what are they being trained on? Are they being trained on the ethics, Detroit ethics, or are they being trained just in general regarding city government or what?
They're being trained on the ethics ordinance.
So is that for employees? Does that include elected officials as well, or?
Yes, it does. Both elected and appointees, vendors, anyone who works with the city of Detroit, we want to train.
So does that require the entire board input or just this person that you have designated as the trainer?
We discuss all of these things in our monthly board meetings. We actually have one this afternoon. So we discuss marketing, training, our website, and we keep the board up to date. They're not involved into the day-to-day operation of our office, but they certainly do have input.
All right, any members from the board have any questions for Ms. Phillips? Yes, Ms. Hamud.
You an employee of the city and you're dedicated 100% of your time to the Detroit Ethics Board?
Yes, I was appointed by the Board of Ethics, but yes, I am a City of Detroit employee. I work full-time, as do my 3 staff members. We have 3. We have an investigator, a training specialist, and administrative staff.
Yes, Ms. Lewis.
Actual board members are volunteers, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they're volunteers.
So let me just from the chair, how does that work? If a person is elected, once they take office, do they come and meet with the Detroit Board of Ethics for training, or is that set up around their schedule? How does that work?
We can do in-person training, but we're really focusing on online training and developing the learning management system. That is the easiest way to reach all of our employees in the city. But that is a work in process.
So they would have to log in and then go online and then they'll be trained on?
Yes, we do have training, e-learning training on our website that our city employees can access right now, but we want to develop it into something more, much better than what we have right now.
Where does the Detroit Board of Ethics meet? Do they meet in the Coleman A. Young Center, or where do they meet?
Our office is located at the Butzel Family Recreation Center on Kercheval, and we have our monthly meetings there too. And we will probably have the conference there, but we are considering other locations more centralized in the downtown area if we can secure that.
You often have meetings in different places outside of the Butzel area? Is that?
No, it's mainly at Butzel. So the Butzel Family Recreation Center was closed until last month. So before that, we were at Kemeny Recreation Center on the southwest side, but we've returned to the Butzel Recreation Center.
Any further questions from any members? Yes, Ms. Lewis.
There is no cost currently. We have that budgeted to hold this conference. It will be a one-day conference.
But you don't have a date right now set, you just,
So we're just planning late winter. But talking to the boards that around the city or around the region that are interested, maybe we can work on establishing a date that works for the most people who are interested in attending.
and will you keep members of this board informed or someone informed of once you get a date in certain?
Yes, absolutely. Mhm.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you for being here and thank you for bringing this to our
you.
attention. Definitely. Thank you for inviting us to come and partake in the conference. Thank you so much again. Again, thank you. I mean, again, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you. And again, if anyone, I'm open to suggestions. If all of you, I think, have my email or someone on the board has my email. If you can pass that along, you can reach out to me anytime with questions about the conference, suggestions on speakers or topics. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Okay, moving right along to our next item of our agenda. I believe that might be nearing towards the end here. You're under item E, which is other matters, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the board. Do we have any other matters before this board at this time? Matters before the board this time. All right, moving on to item number F, which is public comments. Do we have any public comments at this time? Any other public can make any comments that they would like to make? If not, this chair will move on to the last item, to adjournment, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
And to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned to December, next month, December, I don't have the correct date in front of me. I know we're in December.
15th.
December 15th at 9 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Slizak.